You all, shall we resume proceedings? Council, are we ready?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioners. We are ready to proceed. Can I kindly ask the usher to bring in the witness? Thank you.
Come with it.
Can I just ask that, Mr. SANNEH, you still face me? The video is something that we will see at some point in the testimony. Please make sure that he has the mic close enough. Yes. Are you comfortable?
Yes, I'm fine.
Thank you for coming back. I hope you had a good break.
Thank you. Yeah.
I would just like to remind you that you're still under oath. So this is the last session. Prior to the break, you were telling us about the third time that you were arrested and detained. You were detained at the NIA headquarters in Banjul. You found out later on that it was in connection with an attestation that you wrote concerning Mr. Malang Fati,
Yes.
essentially supporting an application that he intended to make for asylum elsewhere. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And this arrest took place in September 2013.
Yes, I believe.
You told us that upon arrival at the NIA headquarters, you met Mr. Sukuta.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you gave us the last name, the NIA operative.
This one I'm not sure. Is it Jamme or Jawara? I'm not sure that this one. But he was a resident of Bakau, I believe.
Can you tell us for how long you were detained at the NIA on this particular occasion?
Actually, we were there for a long time. We were denied legal counsel.
Apologies. When you say we, who are you referring to? It was yourself and who
Myself,
else?
I was there, and the other two, Malang Fati and his brother Sambu Fati. We were all taken. I found them there. They were detained before I arrived.
So Mr. Malang Fati is the person for whom you wrote the attestation.
That's correct.
How is his older brother connected to you? Is he at all connected to you?
Actually, I didn't know Malang Fati at the time. I knew his older brother briefly through our interactions in the UDP. And he was the one who pleaded to help his brother who was facing trouble. So Sambu Fati is the elder brother for Malang.
So you met the two of them at the NIA.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about what happened at the NIA?
Maybe the first few days I was not told. We had no meetings with the operatives. Then after that, I was taken to Sukuta's office, and that's where they showed me and said, "This is a letter you sent." I said, "Yes." I said, "Yes, but this is tarnishing the image of the country." I said, "Well, if the person believes his life is in danger, and for me, I think it's all all humane. It's a humane duty for me to help him escape that threat. So I told him, but he said he was also arrested, detained for a long time, and then released, but he's back in the job. And then I said, well, that's for him. So that's how the interrogation process started. It went one after the other to a point where the Director General of NIA called me, Malang and Sambu to his office with the NIA team.
Can you tell us the name of the director of the NIA?
Yankuba Baji, to say that we should just apologize on camera to the president. Then he will request that they release us. I said, what am I going to apologize for? He said that what you said here in this letter, this is wrong and so on. At the meeting, I refused. I said I cannot appear in front of a television. I was there more than 72 hours detained. I was not allowed access to legal counsel, so I refused to cooperate.
You said that he called you with members of his team.
Yes, the management team there.
And this was within the NIA premises?
NIA senior management, yes.
Do you recall any of the other persons present apart from Mr. Yankuba Baji?
Luis was one, I think he's late.
Do you know his last name?
I wouldn't recall the name.
But he's
and
a member of the...
Sukuta was there, and some others, maybe I wouldn't be able to call their names. But it's the senior team, the entire senior team that was there.
On the previous occasion when you were arrested, you mentioned an NIA operative called Mr. Jeng.
Yes.
Do you know if he was present during this particular meeting?
No, I wouldn't recall. These were senior members, and I don't believe he was that senior.
Do you recall how many members were present at that meeting?
I wouldn't say exactly, but quite a few. I think more than 5 of them or so.
And this was a few days after you had been arrested and detained?
That's correct.
And during that meeting, it was Mr. Yankuba Baji who asked you to apologize to the president?
Yes, he was the one chairing that meeting.
And it was in relation to a letter that was supporting someone's application by saying that his life was in danger?
Yes, that's correct.
Can you tell us what else happened during that meeting?
We actually, I didn't agree. So after we left, they started calling individually, Malang and Sambu, so I don't know what they agreed with them, but I was maybe the stubborn one, refusing. They even brought a GRCS crew to the NIA. They were going to film. And I said, no, that is not something I want to do. I want to see my lawyer. I want to see my counsel. But they were not interested in that. Then they did their own, sent some of their officers to speak to me, and the others just to encourage me to comply with them, but I refused.
How did they try to encourage you to comply?
No, the others come, look, if you go on TV, they will release you soon. You will go back to your family. There's no problem. So that's how they were trying to explain that this is nothing. You just apologize to your jamme. And I said, no, I cannot apologize on this occasion. So after a while, Then one night around 1, 2 a.m., they came. They took us one after the other. Malang, Sambu, myself, and the notary public, Mr. Balde. Okay, the first name I'm just skipping.
So this is Mr. Malang Fati, his older brother,
Yeah.
Sambu, yourself, and the notary, Mr. Ba,
Balde.
did you say?
Balde.
Mr. Balde.
Yes.
You said he was the notary. Was it in relation to the affidavit that you...
He was also detained. Sorry, I escaped his name, but he was also there.
Just so the record is clear, is he the one who notarized your...
He is the one who notarized the attestation.
Okay. So they came around 1 or 2 in the morning and
Yes.
started taking you individually one by one.
Yes.
Can you tell us what happened?
So, I'm not sure which one they took first, but I was taken upstairs at the NIA, like their hall. Yankuba was there administering.
Which Yankuba are we referring to?
Yankuba Baji,
NIA director at the
NIA
time.
director.
Who else was present?
The rest I didn't know. Some of them came with hoods and just their eyes on. I think a few of them didn't have anything, but I didn't know those people at the time.
So there were men who wear masks,
Masked,
wearing
they
masks,
wore masks,
except
yes, yes.
you could see their eyes.
Yes,
and
they
that
had
was it.
their eyes up, they could see me. Then,
Do you recall how many of them wore masks? No.
the most of them, I don't know, the 4 or 5 of them wore masks. I'm not sure exactly how many, but some of them had masks on.
Did you eventually come to find out who the masked men were, or do you know from which outfit or organization or who they represented?
At the time, we were at the NIA. We had this unmarked pickup that normally comes in. From the information, we said this is normally the jugglers. The pickup had no number. It's a double cabin white pickup that they came in with. So, but at night, if they come late night or early hours of the morning, usually we understand they come for the torture of inmates in the NIA. There was one military officer who was there, and I didn't see his torture or not, but we were told they came, the man was very badly brutalized. So we had stories like that.
Who provided you with this information?
Oh, we were quite a few detained there. I can remember some of the petroleum ministry, is it CC, the commissioner or the director was also there. The former managing director, Gamtel, what's the name again? Is it Baji or something like that? Baji was also among the inmates there at the time. So we had others, and Fatu Kamara of this network was also an inmate. She was there, and some others. So we get information like that from some of the contacts within.
You mentioned a soldier who was taken away and tortured, from what you heard.
Yes.
Do you recall any information about the soldier, perhaps his name or his rank?
I don't know. If I remember correctly, it's somebody who used to be in charge of his cattle or something, and he was accused of something, then they took him there. So I don't know exactly who that person would be.
Someone who was in charge of cattle?
Yaya James Katul.
Yaya Jam.
So I think, but I can't remember a name to that. Yeah.
Does the name Solo Bojang ring a bell?
Yes.
Was
Because
that
I
the...
found him at mile 2. It could be him, yes.
So you're saying that the soldier who was taken away and tortured could be
It could
Solo
be,
Bojang,
yes.
but you're not
Yes,
sure?
because they come early hours morning like 1, 2. Normally when we hear the main gate creaking, opening, and our hearts sleep, we know that something terrible is going to happen. To who, we don't know. So it was a trademark for that NIA place.
So how
offices.
often did that happen while you were detained there?
They would come, and now and then they would come. Yes, we do hear them coming in. They would open the doors, their vehicles, because we were sleeping by the gate. That's the hall in the entrance. You know, we are just crowded over there. Later, there was a room nearby across. Some were staying there. So anything that comes through the gate, you will be aware of what's happening. It's opening. You know.
Have you ever heard of the name Babandinka?
Baba?
Bambandinka.
Bambadinka. I've been hearing that name, but I'm not sure if I have seen that.
So from what you've said, these are the junglers who would come in early hours of the morning, take people away. Your belief is that
With the NIA operatives,
with the NIA operatives,
I think they are all part of the team, yes.
and you would receive information that these individuals were
They
taken
come
away,
to torture people
tortured.
and they come to yes.
So you were telling us about a particular night around 1, 2 in the morning when they came.
They came for me,
for you.
and the other team, one after the other, was taken to a hall there in the main building on the first floor. And when I arrived there were these people, and young Kuba, they told me to remove my shirt.
Told you to remove your shirt?
Young Kuba, who was conducting the, so they started asking questions. Why did you refuse? Why don't you do this? And then
Why did you refuse to do?
To appear on TV to apologize and things like that.
To apologize to the president, Yahya Jammeh, at the time. Can you tell us what happened?
Then they started slapping, beating, and then all the others came in pounds, beating everywhere, So I think I almost passed out. I couldn't walk when they finished with me. So the guards, NIA guards, just carried me on the one, two of them.
Did you recognize any of the people who were beating you? You said Mr. Yankuba Baji was present.
Yes. I don't know these people myself, but Malang and Sambuleta told me some names, like one Nyabali, a member of the juggler team.
One, sorry, can you repeat?
Nyabali.
Nyabali,
Yes.
from the junglers. Mm-hmm.
Yes, he's from our area. And
When you say from our area, which area are you referring to?
Bansa Misira was from there. And they did, I think, say some two names, but I didn't keep it. I tried to block my out of all this. I cannot remember exactly who and who.
That's perfectly understandable.
Yes.
Apart from the junglers, do you recall if anyone else was
I
hitting
think
you or
they are
beating
with
you?
the NIA, some of the NIA guys there too. It's not only all the jugglers. The NIA is a full participant to this.
So the NIA and the junglers beat you, and then to a point where you were almost unconscious.
Then they dragged me and threw me into the cell.
And took you back to the cell.
Yes. Then the others were also going and coming. They would take you, deal with you, and then come and throw you back into the cell.
And the whole reason why you were beaten was because you refused to apologize to the president.
Well, that may be one of the reasons, but I think we just faced with a sadistic government, a brutal government, and they took every opportunity on UDP just to brutalize us in a way. I was one of the victims. There were so many others, so it's systematic in a sense.
What I'm trying to drive at is whether on this particular occasion, apart from the statements they made in relation to your refusal to apologize to the president, whether there was any other reason that they gave or any other statements that they uttered while this was happening?
Actually, the discussions were few. They were asking questions. I can't quite remember what it is now. But the fact that I refused to comply with what they wanted, I think that should give them this motivation, or, well, it's a culmination. And they could have planned it earlier. I wouldn't know.
So after you were taken back to your cell, did anything else happen to you that night or the next morning?
No, actually we were left in our pain, and normally my wife, when they bring food, they were bringing food at the time to manage these antibiotic creams to apply to the wounds and lacerations, and some rubs for the painkiller, the general body pain. At a later date, there was a male nurse that they brought who came and said he was coming to check us and see what's happening. He just gave some painkillers virtually. That's all that he did.
As far as you recall, do you remember appearing on GRTS while you were in custody?
No, I had refused to appear. So when after all these incidents and my release from prison, I was told that I had appeared on GRCS. I was surprised.
Because you weren't aware of it.
I did not recollect appearing before GRTS myself.
And in fact, I understand that you've never seen the video of your appearance on GRTS.
I didn't want to watch it because the way my wife told me it was horrible. I cannot speak. So I just put it aside.
So your wife told you that you appeared on GRTS, is that correct?
Yes.
We have a video that I would like to play and then get your comments on that. I already asked you before, and you said you're fine with us showing it.
Yes, I'm fine.
So thank you very much for that. Can I ask the QTV van or the technicians to play the video?
Request of the management for us to attend this interview. Most welcome. Yes. So it's the request of management. Request of the management for us to attend this interview. Most welcome. Yes. So it's the request of management.
Yes. What did you wrote?
We wrote an attestation.
Okay.
So one officer So that's the basis. And that's why I'm here. I wrote an attestation for Marlon Fati, at the request of his elder brother, Samuel Fati, of Lower Flood West constituency. Yes. My eyes.
Mr. SANNEH? It must have been very... Mr. SANNEH, please take your time. We'll take a few minutes. Perhaps have some water to drink. Mr. SANNEH, I understand that you weren't even aware that this video was taken, that you appeared before JRTS. Can you just confirm the image that you saw on the video?
Yes, that was me. I think it was after the beating and the torture that they maybe dragged me into this. I wasn't conscious myself, but I never remembered giving an interview or giving this to GRTS. So I think they just dragged and put me in front of the camera and did whatever they had to do.
How do you feel now after watching this video?
Just to attend this.
We just thank God we survived. Because this would have been the same for so many Gambians. Maybe with God's help I survived. If you think of Solo Sunday, he was unable to survive the beating. He died. And you have so many other casualties here. Nogoy, Modungom, so many others, the Lamarons who passed away. So I thank God that I have survived. I could have been the first Solo Sunday also. It could have happened to me because I wasn't conscious of this thing. I never thought I had given or imagined I was giving an interview, and that because I refused all along. And when this was happening, I really wasn't myself. I wasn't my same person.
And in fact, in the video, we can see you trying to lean back just to stay awake.
That's the pain and the impact on the torture that we went through. So really, I think they were just callous in the sense they had no feelings for me then as a human being. You know. So all they wanted was what they want to do and please their dictator. It doesn't matter whether it costs my life or damage my health or anything. These agents did not care. They did not see us as human beings. That's how I see them.
I understand that you weren't conscious or aware of what was happening at that time, so I won't ask you further questions about the situation at the time because you weren't conscious, aware of it. But I understand that you still kept the clothes that you wore during that period of detention. You kept some of the clothes. Yes. You've never washed them. You kept them as they were, and that you want to show those clothing items to the commissioners.
That's correct.
Can we? Can you please show it?
Actually, this was the one in this interview that I wore.
Can you describe the conditions of the clothes as you passed them to the commissioners?
You can see the vest, inner vest that I wore. Maybe the inside you can see all the stains from the beating then. Then these were also clothes I changed. They have stain marks at the back. So this I was able to send home through my wife when they came. Say we want to change clothes for laundry. But later they came for it and asked me to give them my clothes. I said, well, they've washed them. I don't have any clothes now. So, but then I was able to keep this for the record.
Please show it to the commissioners. So, based on your testimony, you're saying that at some point they asked you for the clothes in order to take it away.
Yes.
Why do you think that was?
I think they wanted to hide all evidence of what they did. Because my lawyers, Hussein and his team, were pushing for my release. And later they said I should not be detained at the NIB. If I'm going to be charged, I should be at the Remand Wing. So I think that's the time one morning they just bundled us into a vehicle, took us to the courthouse, and they said they've charged us. And then they took us to Mile 2 Remand Unit.
So do you recall for how long you spent at the NIA?
I would say it was more than a month. More than a month, I would think so.
If you just allow me, I'd like to refer a procedural matter to the chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to admit the video into evidence as Exhibit 0049, with your permission, as well as the clothes, all of which are evidence of the torture that Mr. SANNEH suffered, as well as the condition and state that he was in following the torture that he's testified to. Therefore, the clothing would be Exhibit 0050A, 0050B, 0050C. With your permission, I make those requests.
Request granted.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. SANNEH, after enduring torture at the NIA, at the hands of NIA operatives as well as the junglers, you were then charged and moved to Mile 2.
Yes.
Was it the Remand Wing at that point, right?
The Remand Wing initially, yes.
Can you tell us a bit about what you were charged with?
I think there was a host of charges. Sedition is one of those. And I'm not sure the rest in terms of the legal charges. I cannot remember, but had a series of charges there, including sedition.
Earlier you had mentioned Mr. Malang Fati, Mr. Balde, the notary, as well as Mr. Fati's older brother, I believe Sambu.
Yes.
Fati, that would be.
Yeah.
What happened to those three individuals after you were charged?
I was charged with Malang and his elder brother Sambu Fati, and the notary was used as a state witness. He was not charged. So we proceeded on the case in that.
As far as you know, the torture that you endured, did a similar thing happen to any of those other three individuals?
All four of us were tortured at it.
How do you know that the other three were tortured?
We were helping each other with medication, and we were staying in the same hall.
So after being tortured, one of the detainees then became a state witness, right?
Yes.
And you were charged with sedition and other charges.
Other charges, yes.
Can you tell us what was the outcome of those charges?
Actually, we went up and down. My legal team, they filed a case of no submission. Really, the state, they had nothing to show. The witness did confirm that I never went to his office to do the notarization. I never went there. The only other witness was the NIA operative, who said because of security reasons he cannot give evidence in open court. So then Justice Nkie, who was the judge, used his chambers for us to meet there. But through the process, everything you ask him, our lawyers asked, my lawyers rather, he would say, I was giving orders. So there was nothing he produced as far as evidence was concerned. He was just acting under instructions and orders.
Did he ever say who those instructions came from?
No, his superiors. That's all he was saying.
His superiors at the NIA?
And the NIA, yes. So that was the only witness that they could produce for themselves. And he never gave anything except I was acting under orders, I was acting under instructions, that's all. So the case as it was then ended with Nkia's sentencing. His sentence was to 5 years in jail, of which we served 3 years in jail before and after the elections in December 2016, we got a pardon.
And you were pardoned by the president?
Yes.
Current president. So during this time, you were charged for sedition and other charges based on a letter that you wrote in support of an asylum application?
That's correct.
As far as you know, was there any other basis for the charges against you?
There was nothing else.
I would like to focus on, well, before that, once you were convicted, were you moved from the remand wing of Mile 2?
Yes. I think our conviction was around 13th December, if I remember correctly. Then we were moved to the main yard at mile 2. We were split. I went to one cell, called cell number 4, and just opened the gate and the door, and they said, "Mess boy, this is a new inmate." And I was thrown in, and then they rammed the door and closed it. Finished.
You said it was cell number 4. Do you recall of which security wing? Or was it
No,
in the
this is
main
the
yard?
main
Okay.
yard. So that's how you got into the cell. It was overcrowded. No place to sleep for me. But I thank God I found some good people there, and they helped me. Like, put 2 mattresses together so you can share 3. One of them still back into the service was Bunjadabo. He became very close, and we worked. In fact, he helped me settle down in the cell. So they knew me, they knew my case before. I didn't know them before, but they helped me settle down, because there were people who were sleeping on the floor, because the cells, you had blocks raised, concrete, then you had mattresses on the concrete, then the walkway, people were also sleeping on that. So you all have nothing, nowhere to move. So I was squeezed in. That's how I started my jail. And there were some people sleeping in the toilets. Some were sitting on these 20-liter drums till morning, in the cells, because they had no place to be. So when you go sometimes to the bathroom, you have to jump over inmates to go to the bathroom. That's how we started on that.
I still want to focus on the conditions at Mile 2, especially the main yard.
Yes.
But I also want to ask you to briefly tell us about the Remand Wing before we continue in relation to the main yard.
Yes. The Remand Wing also, I had help. I always find good people in some places. The unlikely of places, the prisons. But one Abubakar Rame, he was a paramilitary, and you had one G.B. Jallo there, and some others. They also helped, because there also it's a queue. You had planks on the, there was a block walk, and then you had planks between the wall and the block walk that they put there, and then you had thin pieces of sponge that are put on the planks, and you lie on the planks. So the last inmate who comes in, you have to start on the ground, on the bare floor. Maybe you get some sponge. Some were sleeping under the planks. They call it dumbbellos. Those so overcrowded, those sleeping under, you have to lie on your side. You cannot even turn. So there are always fights and quarrels. So you put your leg on me, you are pushing me, and so on. So we had those. It was really unbearable conditions. And the ventilation was so poor. I think there was one window at the top, and then one at the door, a small opening in the metal door, and there was no real cross ventilation. So you keep sweating almost like continuously. But they helped me. I should have gone down on the floor, but they said, "No, come, we'll share our bed with you." So they helped me.
And at that time, you were still suffering from serious injuries as a result of your torture?
That's correct.
Did you receive any medical assistance while you were at the remand wing before you moved to the main yard?
At the remand wing, we used to give our names to the staff that we want to see a doctor, and sometimes they will ferry us to the RVH to get treatment. Yes.
Can you tell us about the food that you, were you given food while you were at the remand wing?
There was the food from the prison's kitchen, but at remand they allowed our families to bring in food. So I was getting my food from the family, and when it comes I also serve it, because the food from the kitchen was terrible. It was really tasteless, and a lot of people suffered because of that poor diet that we had. It was very poor food that we had.
Can you tell us about the situation once you were moved to the main yard? You told us about the conditions within the cells.
Cells were overcrowded. The food, like the remand, was terrible. I'll give you an example. I think Thursdays or Fridays they cook a kind of domada, and if you leave it till morning, sometimes we leave some of our food, we say we want to warm it up in the morning with the help of the kitchen inmates. That domada, you'll have a blanket of moldy white on top. Just for the night, it will all be moldy. That's how bad it was. So normally, we try to leave those kinds of food as best as we could, managing our hunger. They allow us monthly provisions. They give you a medical paper, say, for milk, tea, sugar, coffee. That's what they were allowing. And when it pleases them, they just stop. So we manage that with ourselves. And maybe some keep this dry cherry and we try to survive if you cannot eat the domino. The benachin is like you put rice in just colored water, no taste, nothing. You cannot talk about meat. The piece they give you mainly muscles or bones, because we knew from those who were going out to the kitchen, when the animals, the bulls were slaughtered, you have certain kilos, 10 kilos for the director, so many kilos of steak for this other officer. So the best of the carcass was shared by the prison management, David Colley and team, so on. So we were left with the bones and the offals and so on for the prison inmates. We also knew they were taking even the firewood they would put in their vehicles and take. The provisions like onions and potatoes also, because these are prisoners who load it for them. So they come back and tell us, look, we are doing this for A, B, C, D, and so on. So, but this management, they never cared. And they were just for themselves in that sense. The food, so terrible. We had this, is it beriberi? That was rampant in the yard.
Can you tell us what beriberi is?
The inmates that you have, you get sometimes swollen legs, some even their heads so disproportionately get swollen, or their arms, so because of the fluids that come into your system. So when it's there for long, it rises to your organs, and unfortunately some inmates, they lost their lives through that. So what you do is you complain, you go, sometimes you get chance to go to hospital, some it's delayed until it's too late for them. So many casualties in that sense. You know, the clinics is such that they see you, maybe you want to just escape the prison environment. So really no professional assessment. They just look, okay, we'll allow you to go. Then the others, although those at the clinic, at the prisons there, they did their best, but lack of drugs or other medication, they cannot do much for you. So it's as bad as that. You go for headache, you get paracetamol. You go for stomachache, you get paracetamol. You go for footache, you will get paracetamol. So, you know, we try to get medication once it was prescribed from our families. And we do help each other out, inmates. And vitamin B co is the main medicine that we fight this very. Almost every other person is taking it daily to get vitamins to avoid this terrible disease. So those were there, the beatings. Some of the inmates get beaten.
Beaten by who?
The officers.
The prison officers.
Prison officers, they beat them.
Do you recall any examples or incidents?
Yes. I know of one Senegalese inmate. He was not so mentally sound. When we were out, because they give us time to go out, and then so he would sit and sing his songs, you know. It's like, I don't remember exactly, but like Yella Momun Jinne, Jinne Momun Doma, something like that. He would be singing his songs. You know. So I think one of these officers was pissed off. He wanted him to keep quiet, so he refused. And when they tried to rein him, he had a stick. He also fought back. So this man was really very badly beaten. He was taken to the security wing, and I understand he died in that wing. There was also another one called Lamarana Jallo, I think. He was a hefty person. He had a brawl with an inmate, but he was severely beaten. And after a while, he developed conditions. He was going up and down hospital. I think he also passed away. So there were others, individuals who had sustained beatings. Then one day in Ramadan, in the evening, they came round. Then one E. Jamme, they call him E. Jamme, was the operations director, came with his management team with these big sacks. So tell you your bags. We had small bags where you have your pants, your sugar and things, and then some with your Holy Quran. We try to read. I'll say, bring everything down. So they went around and robbed us of all the things that they had issued provisional for us to buy through their medical paper. Our sugar and everything, milk. And that Ramadan month, they took everything out. Even the Holy Qurans, he didn't care about what was there.
Sorry, the prison officers took your
provisions, our provisions,
and your
our dress, our little dress,
during
everything,
Ramadan.
Drinking, bottles, everything they took. Because you had your bottle with water, that's what you drink with. Everybody has a small bottle a bottle by his side for drinking. So he virtually cleared the cells. I was then transferred to the security wing. So the main yard, some of the cells resisted, and they started throwing their lunch balls out, you know. So what they did, they called the paramilitary, and they took some of these people out. They were severely beaten, severe beatings, because those people refused that our rightful property that our families have brought for us, why you snatch it from us and taking them away? So that evening, even to get a cup to have tea to cut your fast or water was a problem for us. So they didn't care what the conditions were. So that's how bad, they were treating the prisoners.
I just have a few brief follow-up questions.
Yeah.
You mentioned a Senegalese who was beaten.
Yes.
Do you know his name?
With time I have forgotten, unless I inquire from some of the inmates. But he's somebody who singled out. He's very quite normally on his own corner, but he will be singing his song. He doesn't attack people also, but mentally you can see that he was not 100%. So.
Do you, by any chance, recall the year when he was beaten?
In the main yard, 2014, 15. No, I wouldn't know exactly.
That's
14,
good enough.
15.
You also mentioned Lamarana.
Yes, I believe the name is Lamarana Jallo. It's one hefty man, really strong build, and he got into a brawl, and then they took them severely beaten, and then he passed away.
Similar question. Do you recall around what time frame this beating occurred?
Within this same period.
2014, 2015, most likely.
Yes, something like that, yes.
Do you recall the names of any of the prison officers who were conducting the beatings of inmates?
This one, they take you out of the main yard. So really, it's like you are on your own there. They, surround you. How many, who, I wouldn't know. But the end result, you see it on them. Okay.
You also mentioned the beatings by paramilitary forces.
Yes.
Was it also within that same time period?
Yes.
2014, 2015, thereabouts.
Time frame. So 15, early 16, something like that.
So you remained at Mile 2 for a period of about 3 years.
Yes.
And during these conditions, for that duration of time, you were eventually pardoned and released. Based on everything that you've told us today, everything that you've testified to, the human rights violations that you suffered, multiple arrests and detentions, tortures, everything else that you've seen or heard happen to other people, can you tell us what impact this has had on not just your life, but also the life of your family members as well?
Maybe what I would like to state first, in Mile 2, I started developing this severe back pains. Even in the morning, when it's time for Fajr, when people are getting up to pray, to walk became a problem. I had to hold the wall to be able to go up to the bathroom to do my ablution. I had treatment up and down orthopedics at the main hospital, but to no success. So the pain was severe. Normally they would give me heavy painkillers, and that's all. When I left also, I continued seeking treatment to private doctors, and really it was getting worse and worse until I had a trip to Addis when at the AU I complained to Dr. Yankuba Gassama. He used to be Minister of Health here at one time. He's now head of the AU clinic at Addis. He said, look, we have facilities for officials and visits. You have a clinic here at the AU. Look, I refer you to our doctor so that you can check this condition for you. Then we had a doctor who did a lot of tests for me. And with the results, he said, look, you are lucky. We have a neurosurgeon from Germany who comes on and off to a private clinic in Addis to do operations there. So I was referred to that doctor who saw me and saw my results, and he was able to pinpoint that I have a displaced disc and destabilized spinal cord at the lower end, the L4, L5 they call it. That's their medical term. So saying, look, this is serious. I cannot do this operation here. You have to come to get this done in Germany. Last December I did go, and we had an operation to do that. And I thank God it went successfully for operation on the spine, because it compressed my spinal cord to the extent that all the pains were radiating down. It was gradually increasing. It said if you take a little longer, you could have been paralyzed. So I thank God I had that treatment, and I feel much better now. And this I can only relate to, because I never had these pains, and I wouldn't think I had an accident, was it 2000, with the late Abu Karamba Gassama, Buba Samara, Unda, and Aminata, those who passed away. We are all in the same vehicle. But even after that accident, I had body pains and some hairline fracture on the leg, but we had treated and I felt better and I never had this pain. So I will only attribute it to the torture that we had at the NI, that it displaced my spinal cord. So this, I think, is a serious impact because I'm fine, I feel fine, but it restricts certain movements. You cannot do certain movements or twist as normal persons would do. So doctors saying gradually it should heal, but I have to be careful with my movements. So that's a personal impact I think I want to state here. For the family, the fact that you are incarcerated and away from your family, your kids, their education, their upbringing, and so on, it was all left in God's hand. And I think my wife did very well when I came out from what I've seen the condition. She had managed the family very well. The other thing is, with our UDP campaign, you lose friends and colleagues, even in the administration. I've spent so many years in government. There are people I worked with, share activities. But after I left, a lot of them, they would even find it difficult to say hello to you. So you will learn to cope with that. People see you as this is an opposition to Yahya Jammeh, so you are a risk to them. If they associate with you, they run the risk of being imprisoned or something. So I think that was a serious impact. Maybe the level of political awareness in this country, and I wouldn't blame them, then also the state of fear of this AFPRC government. So sometimes I think we were left alone in our midst. And my wife sometimes, I would say, was angry because some people who were close, they would have stopped coming over these 3 years while I was in jail. Some wouldn't even call, others wouldn't even say hello. I think that is an awakening. I have gone through it a few times. Gambian society, I'm not excluding myself. Sometimes when the going is good, we are all happy together. When it's tough, you are on your own. You know, sometimes that culture, I think, people need to be principled. We are in the UDP for a commitment, a value that is not for me personally or for my family personally. I believe I'm doing this for the Gambia and for every Gambian and every other person in the Gambia so that we get a better society, a better country. But in the process, all the trials and tribulations, it's unfortunate to say some of those that you expect to help, a little support or moral, not necessarily material, but even moral courage, they turn away from you. I think that impact is serious. But I have learned to cope with that. Now and then, having been a minister and now my own private hand, it's evident in so many quarters. People see people in certain position, they believe that is your value. No, a position does not make an individual or to make his value to society. I think we have to go beyond that thinking. There's a commitment, the efforts, the activities that you do that make you an individual valuable to the society. A position comes and goes. I am not bothered about positions. But I think I just want to expose this culture that we have in our society. We have to build a better Gambia and look towards principles, not individuals or positions. We have to value a culture. I think that is serious. Europe, America, they went through world wars to establish democracy. So if they can do world wars, explode nuclear weapons, to establish a principle on the rights of the individual, the human rights, the value of human being. Today we here, it seems we don't value our own lives. Because if you don't value somebody else's life, you don't value your own. Because what goes around, it can come around to you anytime. So that principle, that value, I think that culture of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, and being in an office to be professional, not to bow down to dictates of the authorities to say this man is in power, so we have to obey whatever he does. If we cannot change that in our society, we are not going to build a Gambia that will have a never again. It will keep coming back on us. So I just want to say a personal view on that.
Mr. SANNEH, thank you very much for answering my questions. Mr. Chairman, I have concluded, so I defer to the commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my counsel, and thank you very much indeed, Mr. SANNEH, for coming to the commission to share with us some very, very difficult experience. As a mild way of putting what you have gone through. Sorry that you had to endure such brutal and inhumane treatment in the hands of your fellow citizens who were agents of the state in a situation that you didn't have any choice, you couldn't get out of. Your liberty was taken away from you. But the very wise words that you just delivered, you just made, thank you again for those wise words. I hope your fellow citizens here, we would all listen to you and take advice. Yes, you cannot run a country without rule of law. You've got to have something to guide you, whatever the situation. Countries that you refer to, they have achieved them so much. Yet, rule of law is something that is respected. As you were speaking, I thought of a situation in Algiers. I think it probably was the last meeting of the Organization of African Unity before it became the African Union. In that meeting, Frederick Chiluba, who was president of Zambia, was seated between Eyadema, the Togolese president, on his right, and Mugabe on his left. And he, Chiluba, became president of Zambia. He was a trade union fellow, trade union background. He was attacking the absence of rule of law in our area, and especially the absence of term limit for leaders. Now, you couldn't have sat him in a more difficult of a place than that. Eyadema was around almost for his life. Mugabe was around also forever. What Chiluba reminded the meeting was a very somewhat trivial thing, but nevertheless it was apropos. He said, look, this country, Algeria, that we are holding this conference in, just recently beat Germany in football. If there was no rule of law or no rule governing even football, you cannot get Algeria to beat Germany. Rule of law, rules we must follow. Those were very wise words. Sorry to to take the time in there, but commissioners, if you have any questions, please so indicate. Bishop, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. AMADOU SANNEH, we are so sorry to hear the dreadful ordeal you had to go through for a number of years. Now, since a government could only be formed by one political party at a time, how would you advise a ruling party to deal with the other political parties in the opposition? That's my first question.
Thank you very much, Mr. As we state, there are rules of engagement in politics. We have to give each other space. That's one. Because I think one of the tenets in the Constitution is the freedom of association for all citizens and the freedom of expression. And I think politics embodies this. You go out, look for people to get their votes, and you explain your programs for them to appreciate what you want to do for your country when you become the governing party. So it's to respect these rules of engagement. But right now, let's say freedom of expression, we have certain laws which the former regime left here. I think one of them would be false information and things like that. Public Order Act is also was being misused. They created laws to entrench themselves and to deny others their basic human rights and basic constitutional rights. And this, I think, we need to undo. People must be free to express themselves. They must be free to organize themselves, free to associate themselves. And no Public Order Act or other obnoxious law should stop that specific right that is enshrined in the Constitution. So I think there is a need for reform also in the judicial laws and things which we find were used as instruments of oppression rather than allowing political parties freedom to operate.
Right. My second question would be this. Since you experienced the awful conditions at the Mile 2 prisons, would you have some recommendations for prison reforms, namely the condition of the accommodations for inmates, and secondly, the behavior of prison officers towards inmates?
Thank you again. Of course, I would have some recommendations. But you see, the prisons was being used as an instrument of punishment and oppression. And as Yaya would say, my hotel, my 5-star hotel, you know. We know the 5-star service that was there was just the worst thing you can expect, maybe a concentration camp or so. The reforms I would expect, one, the administrative reforms. Over the years, the way they operate has become the culture of the management there. Being it wrong, they still adopt it as their way of operation. I would think we need fresh blood in managing our prison system, especially the senior management. I know they've changed David Colley, they have a managing director, but still you have a core of senior management who were there, who were dealing with the old things and so on. Likewise in other services.